Stan Gibilisco here, proprietor and operator of amateur radio station W1GV, Whiskey 1 Good Vibrations, with a little story for you. Way back when I was recovering from a serious injury, and my parents took me in Rochester, Minnesota, on their house on top of the hill where all of the utility wires were buried under the ground so I could fly a kite-supported antenna for 160 meters, and so I did. I flew a half wavelength antenna, and I even flew a full wavelength antenna at 1.8 megahertz and had quite a blast, 270 feet for a half a wavelength and about 540 feet for a full wavelength. I don't know today whether the Federal Aviation Administration would like that very much, but I guess nobody ever raised any objections. 1.8 megahertz being a nighttime band, this 9-foot kite, this 9-foot delta wing kite, which would fly in light winds, actually at a considerably higher angle than that shown here, was a very effective antenna for 160 meters at night in the winter in Minnesota. It only takes a radio ham to fly a kite when it's below zero outside and it goes staggering around in deep snow with one arm paralyzed and make it work. And so I did, and I had a blast, as I said. Well, it occurred to me, a friend had loaned me his Yaesu FT101. Remember the old Yaesu FT101 transceiver? Put out about 100 watts. And I had a trans match in my bedroom here, little Johnson Viking matchbox for 80 meters and up, and then I believe an MFJ transmatch for 160 meters, and I flew this antenna and made it work great. Finally, I decided that a 5/8 wave antenna would match better with the transmatch, so I went with that. 5/8 of a wavelength. So I had a 5/8 wave, and I also used helium balloons when there was no wind, about 3-4 feet in diameter. And it worked very well. It didn't really need radials, although I did lay a few 120-foot radials down in the vast yard that my parents' house had. And so I was on the air all that winter long, 1980, I believe it was 1988, the winter of 1987 to 1988. I had my injury in 1987 and was recovering over the winter of 87 to 88, and courtesy of that friend and learning to send CW left-handed because it was my right arm that was paralyzed, I had a real good time. And then I I decided that there was something very interesting I might try. At the end of any antenna like this, there is always a voltage loop or a current node. The current is minimum, the voltage is maximum. And when you have a transceiver like the FT101 with about 100 watts of RF power coming out of it, you get a pretty significant voltage at the end of a wire antenna like this. So it occurred to me, I wonder what would happen if I took one of those little fluorescent light bulbs, you know, the kind that was in a desk lamp. They were maybe about half an inch in diameter and 8 or 10 inches long, and just tied one end of it to the end of this antenna and let it dangle up there. See whether or not it would flash as a result of the high voltage present at the point at the end of the antenna. And sure enough, it did. So I could send Morse code CQ, 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 DEW1GV and have it be flashing up there like that at night. And of course, the kite and the wire and everything else were invisible. The only thing people would see was that little flashing Morse code up in the sky. Morse code UFO. Well, I tried that for a little while, but then I decided that maybe it wasn't such a good idea because someone might really think it was a UFO and call the sheriff's department or something, and then I'd have the sheriff to talk to about terrorizing the residents of Rochester, Minnesota with imitation space alien Morse code UFOs. So I decided not to leave that up there like that. But it was an interesting experiment, and if you ever want to attract your sheriff around in your parts, in your winter, in your cold climate, be my guest. Tell me what happens. But don't blame me for recommending it, because I would advise against it. It's just something that's too much fun to be legal. Stan Jabalisco, W1, Good Vibrations, saying 73, which means best regards, and so long for now.